Hey, welcome back to the Positive Side Podcast. Glad you're tuning in. Host Jeremy Todd. Man, I always say in my interviews, and I love having people that I truly know. And today, it's one of the best guests I've ever had. He's probably been on here more than anybody. A voice of the generation, Brandon Handley. Hey, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey man, thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. The voice of a generation, voice of a generation. That's right. Yeah, happy to
Hey,
be here, brother.
well, I'm going to call you that for the rest of our lives.
I
You know
love it.
that, and I
Yeah,
love
man.
it, and it sticks. It makes sense, and it's true, my friend. Um, Last night I was on your show, and we talked about this topic. We're going to get right into it. And
Do it.
you asked me last night, and I've been thinking about this all day today um, about a higher power, the source energy, where that's coming from. And I made the comment yesterday, and it's hard for my brain to grasp the concept because I've talked about this infinite universe, that universes go on and on and on and on forever. And a lot of times when I think of universes, I always think linear. Like they go this way,
Mm-hmm.
but they go
Mm-hmm.
down, south, up,
Mm-hmm.
down, left,
Mm-hmm.
right. They're everywhere, and they
Yeah.
continue to go out in all different directions.
Right.
And then, I also mentioned last night about having there's a theory with every black hole. Within every black hole, there's a trillion other universes, and every universe has another black hole, which opens another trillion universes.
Sure.
So the question is how can that be possible if there is one God, source energy, higher being? How do I grasp that concept? And how can I make that make sense from my tiny mind?
Well, stop limiting your mind by calling it tiny. First of all,
All right, we'll go
right?
with that. Yeah.
Start accepting that you are the universe, and start realizing that this is maybe yours. And then why wouldn't there be enough for everybody out there, right? And how are you planning to use this universe? And that you create everything that you see,
I
and you
do.
create, you do. I mean, right? I mean, how do you not create everything that you already see, do, and are?
It's interesting. And I agree with that because every decision I've ever made my entire life brings me right to this exact point. And
Hmm.
everything I'm looking at, I've created this existence by the decisions that I've made, not only today, tomorrow, yes, last week, the year before, 10 years, 20 years ago, because this is my reality, and you are exactly correct. And I guess that's an interesting thing, the way you point that out, because at the same time, if we turn that the other way, is going looking in the future, I have the power to create my also future universes as well by every single decision that I make every single second of every single day, every
You're,
minute.
you're you're in sales, right? You're in sales,
Yeah.
right? So what do they tell you to do in sales? And do they tell you to begin with the end in mind?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, how is your life or anything else differently, right? So if you begin with the end in mind, and you say, this is my end in mind, and this is my visual for that, then everything in between it has to line up to it, right? And you're
Okay.
creating, you've already created your future. You created those multiverses, right? You've already created like everything, every possible different direction that you could go. You've probably already imagined. It's the one that you line up to most often, with the truest sense of energy and possibility, right? So that's the universe that you're calling forth for yourself.
So what you're saying is that there are infinite amount of universes that I've already created that are based on every single decision that I've already made that I'm and all the ones I could possibly make. However, the one that I'm going to make is going to be the one that's going to align with me the best, I guess.
So the one
So I
that's
could
gonna
make another decision that kind of go a different way to a different universe that I've already created in sense. But at the same time, if that's the answer, then I already
they're already all done.
that's the best one for me.
There's no time or space, right? So everything's already been created, right? Like from the Bible, right? Like everything's already been created. All you have to do is become aware of it and call it forth. Everything.
And when you say the Bible, when you talk about
I don't know the Bible that well, so I mean, I'm just saying, like,
okay,
didn't they, basically the universe has already been created. Everything's already been created, right? It just hasn't been realized. So you, Jeremy Todd, haven't realized your full self and everything there is to realize about you.
is it possible to do that? Is it possible? Because
They say that it is. I mean, look, I mean, that's but here's the thing, man. Uh, do you value the person that can come to self realization and goes and sits in a cave to live with themselves, right? Or do you value the person that brings you the iPhone more?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good point. I mean, I don't know. I guess they both had their, their pluses and minuses, but it's interesting. The person in the cave, if they've truly identified with who they are, and they know exactly what they value, know exactly their path of life, that would be an interesting concept. I don't, I couldn't even
So
comprehend that.
the idea for them, the idea for that person is that they realize everything outside of us is a mirage, right? That everything outside of us is what they call, and don't grill me too hard on this, but everything outside of us is Maya, right? That is in Hinduism, right? That's the illusion, right?
Yeah.
The only thing that's really important is and true is what's inside of us, right? And what's inside of Jeremy Todd is you've got a life force that's within you, right? That grows your hair,
Hmm.
that makes eyelashes, knows how to make tears, knows how to pump your heart, build a heart, and all these other things that you, Jeremy Todd, do. But do you know how to do that yourself?
No.
Could you manually sit down and be like, you know what, today I'm going to grow this fingernail just a little bit longer, right?
No, no, can't do
Right,
that.
right. But you do it, right? You do that. Something inside of you has that instruction and knows how to do that. So wouldn't you want to get to know that which you are? Because that's you.
Correct. That, yeah, correct. That is exactly. I understand what you're saying. I guess
So
it's a
once
hard
you
concept to grasp.
once you tap into who you really are, the life form, the life force that you are, nothing else kind of matters.
Is that along the lines of, for example, I think it's probably, I think, was the example of Gandhi. Like, there's several layers of levels of life to get to, and Gandhi has got to the absolute top level, to where you can. I mean, I guess, is that more along the lines you're talking about? We all have that within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
However, we're clouded by decisions outside sources that are clouding our mental health.
It's hard to say, right? Like, I mean, I'm no expert in it, but I would even go so far as to say this is, I mean, that's the way it has to go, right? It's kind of like you are a human being seed, right? Like you're a seed, and this is part of your everybody's evolution, right? Like you are now you're sprouting, now you're blossoming, right? At this point of the self actualization doesn't mean that like everybody's God, right? Everybody, if God is everywhere and we're a part of that, then we are also God, right?
Yeah.
But our self realization is this idea of your seed. If you go, apple seeds, right? They fall down, they hang out, they do their thing, and at some point they start to flourish. They grow up, they grow into a tree, and then they fruit, right? And then
Yeah.
the cycle repeats itself. We're just people seeds.
All right. Once again, we're talking to Brandon Handley, host of Spiritual Dope Podcast, one of my favorite podcasts ever. And I love the guests that you have on there too. That it just, it answers so many, it answers so many questions for the questions that I have that I don't even know that I even have, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I love listening to people's insight for different spiritual backgrounds, different religions. And so once again, I mean, if you haven't heard this show, make sure you run over to the Spiritual Dope Podcast, check them out, because it's off the chain. Well, that being said, then, so we are seeds, and I've asked this to you probably more times than we could probably shake a stick at. But if that is the situation, I turn 117 years old and I decide to die, and I'm out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Where does my source energy go? Because, like anything, energy, I guess, is always consistent and never stops. It's
Mm-hmm.
and that is, I think, is a proven fact that energy never stops ever. Where does that energy go? What happens to the next level of life?
You're talking about your life force energy.
Yeah.
So, right, because they do all kinds of things like when you die, you weigh XYZ, and at the point your life force goes out, like you still weigh the same,
Yeah.
right? So where does Where does that life force go? Yeah, I don't know, but I'm not. I'll tell you what, I'm less worried about it than I've ever been. Right?
Why is that?
It perpetuates. Right? We return back to the pool. Right? There's like a big old pool. We're already all a part of it, right? And right now we're just kind of living out these like individual facets of it, right? You know, and we've kind of detached from the original source. We're like, nah, it's not the pool I'm supposed to be in. Guess what? You're already in the fucking pool, dude. You're already in the pool,
Yeah.
and you just don't recognize that you're a part of it. I mean, that's another big one. In one of the stories they talk about in Hinduism is, you know, is the wave separate from the ocean,
Yeah.
right? And it's not, right? The wave is the ocean,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
just has this appearance of, you know, kind of standing out and being a part of it, even if it's for just a moment. But they're one and the same. They're the ocean. We're energetic beings in an energetic universe, multiverse, whatever, big old pool of energy. And right now, this is just how we're showing up.
So, okay, so when you mentioned, and this is interesting when you were saying we're all part of the same pool. Do you think there's a total amount of energies of souls, and that's it?
Is there a
Or do
finite
so
amount?
yeah,
No, dude.
or do
No.
souls just continue to go and go and go, and there's a jillions and jillions and jillions and jillions of souls? Do
Yeah,
they come and do they
I
go?
think
Do
how
they
many zeros is in a jillion? There's at least that many, right?
then I guess that's the question. So then what happens if there's this many people on the globe and
So
there's jillions and jillions and jillions of
we make the
souls?
mistake of thinking that we're separate.
Okay, explain that.
So there's like I'll call it one massive soul, like maybe, you know, we're fingers on a soul, you know, soul body.
Okay, I can understand that. We're all just bits and pieces of one gigantic soul, is what you're saying.
Hmm. I mean, if we
Whatever.
look, I mean, what do they? What's that line? You know, as above, so below. If we go into our bodies, right, the blood, you know, has a mind of its own. We've got, you know, active stuff inside of our, what are they? You know, white blood cells, this, that, the other thing. We've got, again, we've got cells that create heart tissue, right? We've got cells that create skin tissue, hair, and all these other things. They have programs on their own, but they're all still a part of who we are, right? I don't say that, you know, there goes blood again, doing its thing,
Yeah, right.
right
Yeah.
there. You know, I don't separate what's inside of me from the rest of me. So why do we separate ourselves from all that's living, right? I mean, everything around us is alive in one shape or another. Even, you know, even if we say that our mics aren't alive, they're you know, unfortunately, in some way, shape, or form, that they are. They are moving. This is energy moving. Either I forget, you know, either super quickly that we can't recognize it, or so slowly that it just, you know, right there. But
Yeah.
it is moving.
Yeah. I guess that was what I was saying earlier, is that we're always, the energy is constantly always there. And that's
It never
super
changes, right? So there's never any change in energy or mass.
Do you think there are, if I go back to my planetary universe thing, what are your thoughts about other multi universes, about being an infinite amount of universes and galaxies and stars? Because, you know, they say that if every single star has, you know, at least 10 to 12 planets or something, and every galaxy has a billion stars in it. What are your thoughts about, like, how do you combine the thoughts of spirituality with being here and being in our energy source, and how do you combine the both, or how do you separate, or do you separate, or what is your thoughts about all these other universes that continually go on for an infinite amount of time and in distance?
I mean, if you can imagine it, then it's so, right? I mean, how's it not?
Yeah, I just and again, this is why I get
I mean,
confused
are you
with.
waiting for proof? I mean, you're waiting. So let's boil this down though too. So here we are. Uh, we're working off of what we know on a planet that's, you know, how big on in this singular universe that we're aware of, I'm gonna go all the way back to, we still don't know how the fuck we got here.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
we don't
exactly.
know. We don't know how we got here, and we're trying to decide whether or not we can figure out if there's more of what's here out there. We don't even know what here
Well,
is.
I get it, but we know that there's other planets and galaxies out there.
Sure. How so? I'll pull the Adam Waltons on that one. Well, how do we know that? Right?
Well, I get that, but I think there is. I think there that's that.
Prove it.
Well, I mean, you can look at picture or like satellites and telescopes, and they have pictures of other stars and other
You
planets.
sure? Yeah, they're not self-generated.
I, I don't know,
I mean,
man.
I mean, look, I hate to be that guy, right? But I mean, there's physicists out there too that have proven out, like in one way, shape, or form or another, that we're part of a holographic universe, right? So within everything that we see is everything already, right? So all the information is contained within, all the information is contained like in our fingertips, right? Everything's already there, and it's going back to, like, we're not separate from the whole in any way, shape, or other. And if there are other multiverses out there, I'll tell you, Jeremy, I don't get caught up in that. I don't think into the multiverses other than to say, what we were talking about earlier. What do you want to call forth? It exists already, right? So whichever line you decide to walk forward into, you're walking to meet your future self, right? Your
Yeah,
future self exists in every time, space, or place. Which one do you want to resonate with and call forth?
yeah, it's a good point. It's just interesting when I think about that, and maybe I'm not supposed to think about that. Maybe my mind is, it's just so hard for me to grasp that concept that I'm not supposed to. Maybe I'm supposed to just understand that this.
What
And
do I mean? So instead, and we'll play the. What do you want to call forth?
that's a great question. Um, I guess the one word that pops in my head is just prosperity and knowledge and in life, financial. I mean, let's not. I mean, that helps as well. Happiness for sure, and peace. That's what I want to call forth.
So we both come from coaching backgrounds. What's that look like for you?
What does that look like for me? Well, that's an interesting question too. And sometimes that future is clouded by what I'm so caught up in the moment of trying to make it from day to day that I think that would look like for me is being completely carefree, not having to. I mean, I hate to boil it down to work, but I don't want to have to go to a 9 to 5 job. I want to be able to do what I want to do and have nothing to worry about, but
What's
my
stopping you
health
from
and
doing that
peace.
now? Like, I mean, honestly.
I don't know. Is it? I don't know. Maybe I'm on my path. I feel like I'm on the path to get there, and I feel like I'm closer now than I've ever been to get to that point. So I don't think really anything stopping me. I think it's just a matter of time before I get there.
So I mean, that goes back into the whole idea of being a people seed, right? You're
Yeah,
just kind of you're in your place. Excuse me, and you're growing into this awesome Jeremy plant that is about to is about to you're either about to we're coming into spring, right? We talked yesterday about how spring is so awesome. I love spring too because we get to see kind of like these these dormant trees and the leaves as they kind of slowly unfurl, right? And when they unfurl, they're like these really soft things, right?
sure.
And what I love is to, as the year goes on and those trees, the leaves develop, they develop like these harder coatings and, they evolve into this other thing, but they're always the same thing, right? And I think that your idea of knowing that you're on your path, right? You're always on your path. I believe that you're always on
Yeah,
your path, and it's the idea of you've got your vision and holding that vision, right? Again, it goes to, I would take it steps further, right? Yeah, you've got this idea of what this looks like, but beyond that, like what is, so you're talking kind of in some generalities then, right? So what would some specifics of that life look like if you had to, have one or two?
I would like to be traveling. I'd like to travel and speak. I think those two things I think would be amazing to be able to travel to California, Mexico, South America, the Bahamas, where anywhere,
Yeah,
but have
how
the
often? Like, is that every week? Is it once a week, twice a week, every
if I
other
could get away
week?
every other week, I think every other week travel would be amazing. I would be able to go to Europe, and travel and have plenty of time in between to be to be where I am. And I think that's super, super important as well, because I think it would give me the opportunity really to live the best of both worlds. I would have the travel and the speaking, as well as also the time at the house that I need to spend time with family and really recharge because and get better with myself. I think those two things need to happen. And what happens now in my life, I feel like I don't have enough time because I'm doing a job that, hey, I enjoy. It is what it is. I don't have enough time to dedicate to strictly podcasting, strictly coaching, strictly all that. And maybe that's an excuse I keep telling myself that makes me feel better because I do work a lot. But also, there's probably some truth there as well. So I don't know where that fine line is. And like I said, I'm getting closer. If you ask me, and this is one thing I keep reminding myself, if you ask me where I am today versus where I was 4 years ago, it's completely different. I mean, completely different, way further down the road. So that I can honestly say that, because sometimes I'm hard on myself. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm not really where I want to be or where I'm expected to be. But in reality, is if I look back to where I started to where I am now, it's a way different life. It's completely further than I ever thought or imagined that would ever be. And that path is good. So I think I am on the right path for sure. And I think that future is ahead of me.
So when you were talking, the one word I picked up on outside of all your glorious visions was the idea of need, right? You know,
Yeah.
what if you change that to this is where I want to be, right? And what if you change it to that's simply what you're working towards and being okay with that work that you're doing.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think,
So the reason I ask that is what's the difference in the feeling of needing
yeah.
something versus wanting it, right?
Yeah. I like that.
So is there more pressure in the needing for something to happen than the wanting something to happen?
100%.
Right?
That is a great analogy. Need versus want, because when I say I need that, do I really, I don't need that now, but I do want that,
Sure.
which is
Well, I
a
mean,
completely different pressure.
you're totally different pressure, right? Um, and it's funny because I've raised my kids like that to say, instead of saying I want something, it's a similar vein. I say, could you please change that to I would like,
Sure.
right? I would like that, versus I want it, or in the same place as I need, because if I need something, then there's some tension there, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And you've already got everything you need,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
right? I mean, you're already the person that you're trying to be in a couple different ways, right?
Yeah.
Again, that person already exists. We already talked about that. There is
Yeah.
no such thing as time and space, right? Those two are
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
illusion. That person already exists. It's you're calling that person forward, right? And how often do you want to call that person forward? That's kind of like your I want statements or I am statements, or what would it look like if this were happening, and then you draw that picture out, right? And I think that's where the power is imagining imagining it as if it were so right now.
Yeah. I mean, just saying that need versus want and thinking about that in my own head, it even relieves stress right away, because it's so true, because I don't need that, but I want that. And
Yeah, it'd be
it's like
great.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's yeah, that changes the perspective on that completely. Um, let's kind of shift the direction of this real quick, because we could talk about this all day. We did all day, all night last night as well. But I really want to talk. The one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show was the direction that you're going with your path through your podcasting. I mean, we started out with Fatherhood for the Rest of Us, which I love that podcast still, and I know we've got a lot of connections still to a lot of people that were in those groups. You shifted it. What was the podcast? You said you had three of them.
Prosperity, yeah, I did
Oh, the
prosperity
prosperity
practice.
practice, yeah,
Which was dope. I mean, it was great.
great.
Look, it was good. I loved it.
Which was great. I love that too. Yeah. And then now
Yeah.
we're switching to the spiritual dope. Why did you
Mhm.
make the transition from those to where you are now?
Mhm.
And where do you see it going in the future?
Fatherhood for the Rest of Us was created because we're supposed to, as podcasters, when we step into this place and space, is where's your niche?
Yeah.
Where's your niche? What is your avatar?
Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
your avatar?
Oh, yeah.
And the one thing I thought about those, I love being a father. Right?
Sure.
I really do. I love being a father, and it was like this thought in my mind was if there's something I'm always going to care about for a very long period of time, it's always going to be fatherhood. I went into the Fatherhood for the Rest of Us podcast. It's funny, you wrote in your book, what am I going to do with all this success, right?
Yeah,
I was like, this is going to take off. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be great. I went into it for the wrong reasons, right? I went into it for the wrong reasons. I went into it to try to be a marketing and be a fatherhood coach and all this other stuff. And I found that I wasn't in love with the space. I found that I wasn't in love with, I didn't really care that much about the space outside of, some of the conversations and the people that I met. And doing that changed my life. Yeah. Creating that podcast changed my life, changed my relationship with my family, allowed me to quit drinking, allowed me to, kind of get into shape. And it did so much for me. But I felt like I could serve more than just fathers, right? I felt like the content that I was enjoying creating was beyond fatherhood, was beyond just men. And I spent a lot of time kind of getting into the law of attraction space, but I also felt like law of attraction itself was limited, which was why I did prosperity practice. It was kind of like law of attraction plus, right?
Yeah.
Law of attraction plus, things that were actually meaningful. Because I think when a lot of people focus on law of attraction, it's like they're like gets into this want space, and it's never like, here's what I can give, here's what I can give, here's what I can give. Also focuses on it's limiting, right? And I also created it's limiting in the fact that I'll go back to the beginning where we talked about the idea that I am Brandon. I am limiting what I'm allowing to be possible in my life, the vision that I'm creating, by continuing to spit out, oh, I want this. This is what I'm trying to manifest today. Versus, what if I surrender to the thing that knows how to create blood, to the thing that really knows what's best for me in the universe because it's keeping me alive. It is life itself. What if I surrender to that? Does that know better for me than I can figure out on my own what I might want and what might manifest in my life? And there were some triggers there. Like I was like, whoa. And the idea of that too was also, I was doing this, giving them, giving the audience, quote unquote, what I thought that they wanted, and trying to sell them what I felt like they needed. Right. Yeah. So I still felt like I was kind of behind this veil, and I felt like I wasn't really being authentic to how I felt and everything that I was really feeling. And that opened up to me through one of the prosperity practice guests, Regina Lawrence, who Elise hooked me up with. Right. Elise has always been a part of the journey. She's been a big part of that journey. And having Regina on, who was like this high-powered lawyer at one point, gone into spiritual marketing and flourishing and doing well, I was like, wow. It's like, that's possible. That, and then another friend of Meg's, whose name is Deb Levine, is a medium. And I had a medium session. I was like, why I was like, this is it. I got to stop hiding behind what I think people want, and then quote unquote giving them what they need, and really have some of these really powerful conversations in relation and searches into connecting with this source, which I feel like I've done at various times, stepped into the space, and you'll find that a lot of the people, this is so common, this is the path, as it were, is that you have these awakenings, or whatever you want to call it. Woke culture is a little bit different than the spiritual awakening that I'm talking about, and then you go through and you're like, what was that? Right? It's like kind of tripping over something in the dark, right? You're like, what was that? And then you turn on the light and you're in some like amazing place, but you don't know how you got there. Right? Sure, yeah. And you're like, how do I get back? Yeah. Right? How do I get back? And so I've spent probably the past 3 or 4 years understanding what happened to me kind of in that moment and how to integrate that with everything else going forward, right? How to keep that kind of grounded, because it's super easy to be the guy in the cave, right?
Yeah.
And just detach and go in and have a great, like, you can it's a great, you can do it. Um, but I'm choosing this alternate route, and I think in Buddhism it's called the Bodhisattva. I'm not saying like I'm a total enlightened one, but it's called the Bodhisattva is the one that kind of experiences enlightenment but brings it back and still is with the people. Franciscan monks, are real similar to that too. It's like it's spirituality for the people. So here it is. Spiritual dope is spirituality for the people. It's if you go to my podcast site, you'll see that it's graffiti, it's grit, it's real. I'm not. I don't want to have like these sugar coated conversations of fanciness and flightiness.
Yeah.
I want to have podcasts. I want to have people on there that are talking about how to maintain this feeling of connectionness to source, to energy, divine, whatever you feel like you need to call it, knowing that you're tapped in and showing up like that every day with the rest of your life, with everything that you're doing. I was listening to a great guided meditation class coursework where it talks about devotion, and devotion is really kind of what is your job. It's geared towards your work, right? How can how can work become your devotion? How can everything become spiritual? How can Albert Einstein, I say this probably like twice a day or something like, but either everything's a miracle or nothing's a miracle. Which life do you want to live? Making that choice. What choice do you want to make? And for me, I 98 days out of 100, I choose to see everything's a miracle.
You mentioned, and this is interesting, you mentioned about surrendering yourself to the higher power, higher force, higher source, whatever that was going to be.
Yeah.
We hear that reference a lot of times in religion about how you need to surrender yourself to God.
Yeah.
Do you think, are we all talking the same thing? Are we all talking about the same? I mean, it makes the concept makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so I mean, it's different levels of understanding, right? And you'll read that in I think I found that first. I think Len Wright pointed that out to me first. I'm not sure if you ever had him on your show.
Mm-mm.
He's a great conversation. There's different levels of understanding depending on kind of which culture you go into. In Judaism, there's I think 4 different levels of understanding. And I think in some others there's like 7 different levels of understanding. Let me pull up I'll pull up the 4 levels of understanding.
Yeah, because when you said that, I mean, that was the first thing I thought about, and I think sometimes when you whether and again, I know it gets tied to religion instantly when you say that, but that's not the way I interpreted it, and that's not the way I believe it. But I actually believe what you were saying because sometimes you almost catch yourself fighting what you should do and what is right, the right path, but you justify it to yourself that you know better than the higher source or higher power, and then you go down that route, which may or may not be a bad route to go, but it may not be the one you're supposed to go.
This is kind of how you know it, by feeling your way forward, right? We try to hammer our way forward with strictly mental, like simply by our mind, right? We're like, well, this is the analytical, this is the logical, this is the mind's way of doing it.
Yeah.
And we detach that from the feeling, right? We say this makes sense, but like inside you're feeling like this doesn't make sense at all. Why am I doing it? Right. Yeah. So when you connect with this feels right, with I don't know this outcome, but I'm doing the right thing for the right reasons, that's kind of the path you should follow, right? So the 4 levels of and I don't know this super deep, but 4 levels of Jewish interpretation of scripture, right? 4 levels of understanding. This is real similar in the Bible too. Pretty much, I mean, I think they're like one and the same.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus was Jewish. I mean, it is what it is, right?
Right. So it says I'm PRDS. Peshat in Hebrew means simple. So your first level of understanding is going to be simple, right? And that means like when I read the Bible, I'm reading those stories. I'm like, oh, Sodom and Gomorrah, that shit was real. Let's go. Everybody,
Sure.
we're
Yeah.
going to go find it, right? Remez in Hebrew means hint, meaning what we were talking about earlier, right? That idea that you stumble across a tree branch in the dark and the light comes on and you're in like this really cool place. You're like, oh, that's the hint.
Mm.
Like, that's your connection. You just got connected. Then Josh in Hebrew means to search. That's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
Right? I'm in that. That's where I'm at right now. It's like I'm searching. I'm searching for levels of understanding, and it's interesting because I don't view, like, let's say you've read the same book over and over, like everybody who's read the Think and Grow Rich, right? Bob Proctor, he reads it every day, right? The idea is, though, for some reason that book continues to evolve, right? Continues to change. The fact of the matter is, though, is that the book doesn't change. You do.
Yeah.
Your level of understanding changes, right? So whatever it is that you're reading that is striking you is something that you've already understood and you recognize it, right? That's research, right? That's research.
Yeah.
You're finding something that you already knew, right? And then Saad in Hebrew is hidden, like, and I don't think that I've gotten to that part yet, but that's also kind of where the idea of you don't throw pearls down before the swine, right? You can't put wisdom down in front of people that aren't going to respect it, right? So if I throw down pearls in front of the swine, well, they're going to eat them. They're going to eat the pearls. They don't care.
Yeah. Absolutely.
They don't care. Same thing with same with somebody who is still in level 1 of understanding, right, or interpretation or whatever. Like they're still in like this fundamental taking everything at face value place in their lives, right? They haven't tripped over that branch yet. They haven't gone into and found it, and they're not looking for anything else to uncover and recover who they are. I don't know how that started, but that's where we ended.
Well, it's interesting because when you mentioned just that quote, throwing pearls in front of the swine,
Mm-hmm.
I catch myself a lot of times trying to have conversations with people that are never going to understand. They're never going to understand what I'm talking about, where I'm coming from,
Mm-hmm.
and I almost feel like I'll have the conversation, and then I'll catch myself and I say, you know what, I almost apologize because I already know that they're not picking up what I'm laying down,
Mm-hmm.
and but they're that's where people are at. They're at different levels, and that's why I
Right.
value these conversations
Right.
with you, and even Adam
But
Walt.
but but but
Another
so, so but,
teammates.
but those guys are on the path, right? That's the thing. So that's the beauty of it. And what's cool is the more that you have these conversations, the more that you can kind of tell where somebody is
Absolutely,
along the path, right?
absolutely,
You're like, oh, really?
absolutely,
And then you're like, I remember my first beer,
sure, yeah, oh,
right?
absolutely,
Type of thing, right? And it's not to say that anyone's better or further along or anything. They're just in different places and phases of their lives, and it's not even to say that just because you don't understand where I am on my journey doesn't mean that you're not beyond me or in a different state or place, because I think we talked about it last night. Every person that we talk to is a lesson, right?
oh yeah,
Every person adds value to life, me, whatever the conversation. So it has nothing to do with being advanced, has nothing to do with being better, has nothing to do with anything else. I'll go back to the whole idea of we're all waves in the same ocean.
yeah, yeah. There is no good, there is no bad, there isn't. I mean, there is just what it is. I mean, it's a very cliche to say it is what it is, but in reality, that's what it is. I mean,
Well,
there's
it is Shakespeare, right? Nothing's good or bad, but thinking that makes it so.
yeah, exactly right. That's a great quote too. Brandon, we talked for 43 minutes. My brother, I don't want to keep you all night, but tell everybody a little bit about the show again. Where can they find the show? How do they connect with you? And again, I'm going to have show notes and I'll have links to where the podcast is because, like I said, I'm not just bullshitting you, brother. I mean, I love your podcast. I love jumping in, listening. I love listening to the guests. They're fascinating and they're all different and they're all unique in their own way. And I don't know if there's another podcast like yours out there. If there is, I don't know it. But hell, there may be, but I don't know it. But I know yours, and
No, I
and I
appreciate
love it.
that. I
So
appreciate
tell
that.
everybody where people can find you.
Yeah, so spiritualdope.co. That's really, I mean, that's where the podcast is housed. You can listen to it from there, and kind of subscribe on your platform of choice. And then a little bit about the show. It's like I said, it's like it is titled the subtext on the site says spirituality for the person that couldn't give a shit about it till now, right? So what does
Yeah.
that mean? That means that you've tripped over kind of that branch in the darkness, right? You're hungering to understand how is everybody else leveraging this kind of source that you've connected with, right? Are you the only one that's thinking the way that you are now that you're kind of in this space and place? And chances are no, which is great.
Yeah.
And my hope is that there's a guest on the podcast that can help you to tune into your spirituality, your source repeatedly, and leverage it in a meaningful way in your life.
Yeah, and that's why I love it, because it is there are so many different people that come on the show. There's going to be somebody on there that number one you'll relate with, but number two you're going to learn. You're going to learn so much from different aspects, different points of views, and I absolutely love it, brother. So man, I'm so proud of you. I love your show. I love how far it's come. I love your family. I love Meg. Love the kids. We got to plan a trip at some point to get together for sure. Now that you're in Pennsylvania, you're about 6 hours away from me, probably, give or
Yeah,
take.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not too bad, my friend. Yeah, we got to figure this out.
We got to figure it out for sure.
I'm gonna go to North Carolina here in July. Maybe we can meet down in Nashville or something for a quick weekend getaway. That'd be a lot of fun
For
too.
some lunch.
Yeah,
Grab a
absolutely.
lunch.
Or
Love
a
lunch.
quick run and a triathlon or
Oh my
something.
God!
Yeah.
Right. Hey man, thanks for being there to support that one. And man, I always appreciate what you're doing. I think what you're doing is awesome too, Jeremy. You've come so far. So from the days of we couldn't figure out how to separate our audio feeds
Oh yeah.
to where you are today. I would say you're crushing it, but I'd say that you're flourishing. That you're in your space and you're lighting the path for many others. So appreciate you, sir.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, my friend, and for everybody out there all around the world. Obviously, you could be able to find the links within the show. Share the podcast. That's the way most people find the show. Subscribe to Brandon's show. Subscribe to my show. Leave those reviews. It allows other people to find the show. Subscribe to YouTube. And if you're still listening, I hope you are. But we've got shirts and hats coming out. I finally got this thing put together. My buddy Dave hooked it up, and it's going to be awesome. By the time you're watching this, it'll be up on the Positive Side Podcast Facebook page, probably on Instagram. But run over there and check that out. Get all the gear, get all the swag. I say it every single episode. You've got greatness. Oh, what do I always say? Yeah. No, yeah, you've got greatness within. Like always, this is the positive side.